Hello, and welcome to Let's Talk About It with Taylor Nolan. I am your host, and I'm really excited for the episode today. We are continuing a little bit of a Bachelor theme for these last couple episodes. Not necessarily talking about The Bachelor, but talking to women from the show. So in today's episode, we're going to talk to Ashley Spivey, who was on season 15 of The Bachelor. And she, honestly, we've hung out a few times. She lives in New York. And I've just loved following her. She knows all the down low on everything and is just so strong. She talks openly about her struggles with abusive relationships and a sexual assault that she experienced in college. And she just is so outspoken and is such a role model for young women who are struggling standing up for themselves. And so I'm really, really excited to have her on to kind of share more about these experiences. And she's just an all around wonderful lady that I'm so happy that Bachelor World has put me in contact with. So without any further ado, let's get chatting. So welcome, Ashley, to the show. I'm so excited to finally have you on here.
I know. I feel like this should have happened before now.
I know, it should have. You are one of my favorite people from Batch. And I remember you had messaged me a long time ago. And then I just think it didn't come through or something. I don't use Twitter. And I think it was on Twitter you had messaged me or something. And then once Derek and I were together, we finally got connected in New York where you are. And I remember just being damn, I wish I would have been connected with her way sooner. She's a fucking badass.
I know. I feel like it took us forever to meet in New York, and then you left me so quickly.
I did. I needed to.
We didn't get our time that we deserved in New York.
I know. But you I feel like you stick out to me among the other people in Bachelor Nation because I feel like you do such a good job of just calling shit out and you're not afraid to make people uncomfortable. You're not afraid to stand up for what's right. And to me, it's you're in a way such a role model for that for me, because I think especially once you do get some backlash on social media, it's you're kind of scared to stand up and be no, this is actually what I think, or this isn't okay. And I just know from following you, it's definitely encouraged and reinforced to me that no, these are good things to share. It's okay to be a little political. It's okay to call shit out.
For sure. And what's the point of having this platform if you can't stand up for the things you believe in? Mm-hmm. And if people are going to choose to support you, they should appreciate those things about you. Because if you're choosing to keep those things about you quiet, then they don't know the real you.
Yeah.
There's no point in supporting you, that they're supporting someone fake. Mm-hmm. And I guess a lot of times I don't have to worry about that because I don't have the numbers like y'all have. So I don't care if I lose, 20,000 people or something like that. Cause they're just well, whatever.
Yeah,
that doesn't matter, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I know I definitely lose. I don't know if it's just because I'm not in a bachelor relationship anymore or because I do, or because I have started speaking out more about certain things. I talked about the R. Kelly documentary that came out. I've talked about all kinds of things recently, shared some of AOC's stuff. And I know that's, very triggering for people in terms of which side are you on and all of that. So it definitely is somewhat of a risk, but yeah, I would way rather be authentic and actually have people that are following me actually have a sense of who I am and what I stand for. And I feel like it's just kind of irresponsible to not call things out and to not make really specific points and to not stand up for people who are marginalized on our platforms, because there's really young people too that are following this. And I just think I feel like it's part of an obligation.
It is. Just because you were on an entertaining reality show doesn't mean that your platform and your Instagram has to be used for entertaining people now. Mm-hmm. It can also be used for educating. Mm-hmm. And if people don't like that, I mean, I don't know what to say. Yeah. Or it's just like, I think it's good to listen to other voices, even if you don't necessarily agree with them, because this is how we learn things. So I encourage people not to necessarily unfollow in the beginning.
Yes.
I mean, if it's getting to the point where it's a hate follow for you, or it's frustrating you and it's no longer bringing like joy into your life, then unfollow. But at the same time, I think it's good to have differing viewpoints.
Yeah, I literally actually had just messaged someone. I had got a DM and it was just very negative, and I scrolled back and there were literally like 4 other messages throughout the year from her that were all just so negative and mean. And I actually responded and I was just like, you know, all of your messages have been really negative. Like, if I'm making you upset or uncomfortable and you're making me uncomfortable, I would really just prefer if you unfollowed me. And all she wrote back was agreed. And I was like, okay, good. I feel good about that. I'm glad I got that negativity out of my life.
Right. But, and at least she didn't say anything like negative back. I think that's a positive interaction from something that was very negative.
Yes. I agree. And so I want to just maybe do like a little mini overview of some of like your badass moments of calling out shit from Bachelor World.
Okay.
So the first one that I can remember, and you were on, what season were you on again? I was
on Brad Womack's second season. So season 15.
15. Okay. Yeah, and that was his second season. The first time, like, he didn't pick anyone, right?
Right.
Yeah. And so it was very controversial.
Very.
And then, so obviously you've, I'm sure, been calling shit out since before this, but one that sticks really clear in my head was all the sexual things that came forward with Leo from Becca's season.
Yeah. You know, Leo was just such a character, just because I feel like nothing really had come out bad about him. And then on his season, he seemed like he was kind of like a good force in the Bachelor world. But then all these things started like slowly leaking out about him. And he was just such a douche. I don't know how to like put that in better terms, but just like, he would try to bully women online if they were saying certain things about him. There was one girl who was sharing that he had sent unsolicited dick pics, and he was threatening her with a fake lawyer email, basically. And I was just like, yeah. So he was just trying to bully all these women. I mean, the stuff he had sent to Amanda Stanton, I thought was ridiculous. And it even just got to a point where I think ABC should have stepped in too, because they were allowing him to go on a second reality show on Bachelor in Paradise where he got physical with other people. And it's like, this is not a good guy. This is not someone who we should be promoting. He's already made women feel uncomfortable in his workplace. He is threatening people online. He's sending unsolicited dick pics. Like, no, let's just stop.
Yeah.
I get it that they wanted to use him for drama on Bachelor in Paradise by showing what happened with Joe. But also, when all that stuff comes out, I feel like you just have to eliminate that person from the show. It's kind of the same thing like what happened with Lincoln. I wish that they...
I don't think I watched that, or I don't think I know what happened with Lincoln.
Okay, so with Lincoln, what happened is that midway through Becca's season, Reality Steve got an email saying that he needed to check into one of the contestants who lived in the South Boston area. There was only one. It was Lincoln. I decided to kind of pursue looking into that a little bit more, just because then I became like really invested in it. But I found out that he had, I guess, like kind of assaulted a woman on a cruise ship by grabbing her.
Did he grab her by the pussy?
Yes. He grabbed her genitals.
I can't. Not okay. Just not okay.
Not okay. So we got that information. I didn't go to ABC with it at that point just because I kind of felt like at that point they weren't very receptive to anytime we found out something like this about people. Mm-hmm. So I decided to release it on Twitter. Mm-hmm. Just because, too, I feel like if people live in Boston and they're interacting with him at that point, they deserve to know, too. This isn't just like an ABC-related situation. Mm-hmm. But after, that information came out, they still kept Lincoln in the edits. Mm-hmm. Where they could have easily gone in there and taken him out of the show and been like, this isn't someone we need to have on there. Or even I was like, what if underneath his name, they were just like sex offender? Because he was. Mm-hmm. This is someone who is a registered sex offender now.
Jeez.
Yeah.
All right, it's time for a mini break here from one of my favorite sponsors, Grove. It's like springtime. We're cleaning up. We're, oftentimes a lot of those cleaning materials have a lot of toxic chemicals in them, which is not my jam. So I love shopping at Grove because they make healthier home products accessible and affordable. Over 500,000 families shop on grove.co for non-toxic dish soap, plant-based skincare, and tree-free bath tissue. So they make it very, very easy to find the best natural, eco-friendly products online, and then they get delivered straight to your door. One of my favorite items that they have are the Mrs. Meyer's products. So whether it's their soap or it's their laundry detergent, I absolutely love them. I recently actually got a bunch of dish soap because I was running low, and thankfully I didn't have to go anywhere to get it. It just got delivered right to my door. And right now you guys can get this exclusive Mrs. Meyer's offer from Grove before it runs out. You can select your favorite spring scents. Mine is mint. And new customers will get a free cleaning set in these limited edition scents. When you place your first order of $20, you can get a free Mrs. Meyer's spring hand soap, Mrs. Meyer's dish soap, their spring multi-surface spray, which I love. I use on all my counters. You can get a cleaning caddy from the Grove Collaborative and a walnut scrubber sponges, which I also have, and I love them. I'm very picky about my sponges. So right now, you guys should definitely try Grove before this exclusive spring offer runs out. For a limited time, my listeners get a 3-piece cleaning set from Mrs. Meyer's Spring Scents, a free 60-day VIP membership, and a surprise bonus gift for just you when you sign up and place an order of $20 or more. So again, check out Grove and our special offer at grove.co/Taylor. That's grove.co, not .com/Taylor. Again, grove.co, not .com, grove.co/Taylor. And make sure to get on this gift set before it runs out. And we can get back to the show. Now, what would you say if I were to play devil's advocate here for the people that are like, oh, well, that's stuff that they did in their past. Like, this is their chance for love. Like, you need to just let what was in the past be in the past. And I'm sure that they've learned from that. Like, what would you say to someone that has that approach?
Well, in terms of him, this is something that they did not catch in his background check. Mm-hmm. And this is something that he lied to ABC about. Mm-hmm. And that could have put Becca in a very bad position.
Yeah.
Like, thank God she wasn't ever in a situation where they could have gotten physical or something like that. But I feel like stuff like this has to be put out there. This only happened 2 years before the show started. And he kept on getting a continuation where he didn't get a judgment in that case until after the show had already filmed.
Oh.
Yeah.
Sticky situation.
Yeah. So it's like, I feel like he wasn't honest about it. It deserved to come out. Mm-hmm. I think it was a great learning moment for ABC, and just knowing that you can't trust these people to be truthful about what's on their background.
Mm-hmm. Now, again, a little bit of devil's advocate here. What do we think about saying that, like, okay, maybe we don't know the full story. Maybe like she was also antagonizing things. Like, is he really a danger to Becca or to whoever? And maybe he just misread her signals.
Yeah.
Because there are legit people who say this. So
yeah,
I'm curious how we respond to stuff like that.
I think that he definitely, I'm sure that he can learn from this. I just don't think that a reality show where you're going to be dating someone and being put in these physical situations, I just don't think that's the right place for someone. I think that if he wants to go through all of his, like he could have gone to jail. He decided, I think they gave him community service instead, and then he would have to go to like an AA meeting for his sentence. If he wants to go through that whole program and then try out for the show and be honest about his background and then let ABC decide what they want to do with it, that's fine. But I just feel like I don't know that a dating show is the right place for people who have that on their record. I don't.
Yeah, maybe have a little bit longer of a journey to understand who they are and what they're going through before getting into some kind of a relationship, for sure.
Exactly.
Yeah. And so then I want to move a little bit outside of Batch, kind of on the same theme though here, because a lot of what, you know, in this sense that we've been talking about related to the show, that you know, men kind of being called out for these things that they're doing towards women, whether it's sexual or physical. And there's like this whole notion now, you know, we've heard Trump say it and all of this, that like it's a scary time to be a young man in America these days because you can be accused of anything. And I'm curious for you, like how you've wrapped your head around that statement and like if you've, you know, put yourself in the shoes of perhaps a guy who, you know, thinking back in high school, like was maybe a little bit too drunk and maybe got a little too frisky and, you know, is in fear that like, oh, what if that's going to come back to haunt me and I don't get a job or something like that?
I feel like with my personal experiences, I just have trouble having sympathy for that type of situation just because one, I was in a physically abusive relationship most of high school, 2 years into college as well, where multiple people, whether it was his family, our friends, pretty much anyone kind of just like swept everything under the rug and they knew what was going on and no one was really out there protecting me. And he went on to like go to college and become a college athlete and things like that, you know?
Yeah. And that's always something that like blows my mind because even when the R. Kelly thing came out, I was talking about it on my Instagram and there were a few people, not a lot, but of course these voices are very loud, questioning the victim, the survivors and victims and, you know, really kind of putting some blame on them. There was some victim blaming happening there. And to me, it was like, it's baffling to me sometimes that like, we just don't believe the person that's being abused and we automatically question them as opposed to the person being accused of abusing. That it's like, wow, like just such a weird dynamic mentally because I don't think that we want to believe that good people that we know or people that we look up to would do such terrible things.
Right. I mean, a great example of that is even that Leaving Neverland documentary that just came out and people having such a tough time with believing that Michael Jackson could do something like that. And I think also is that we've had a couple of examples, say like the Duke lacrosse case where there was someone who was saying she was a victim. Turns out she was not telling the truth about that situation. And that for some reason sticks in people's minds. And I think the thing that people just have to realize is most victims are not telling their story to receive
book deals,
money, book deals, or I don't know exactly what they think is going to be accomplished by sharing your story in that way. And in no way do I ever share my story by hoping that I'm going to receive like fame or something like that. It's that I think there's an obligation at some point to tell your story, because other people are going to hear it and it's going to help other people come forward. Every time, it used to be that I felt like if I shared my story that it made me look weak. And so I didn't want to share it, because then people would look at me and they would just be like, oh, how could you let someone, you know, beat the shit out of you for 4 years? Like you must not be a strong person. And that's not
the case.
That's not at all.
Yeah.
Or even if I've spoke out about my rape, that doesn't make me a weak person. If anything, every time I tell that story, like I get a little stronger in being able to admit the details or like help other people bring their truth to light.
Yeah. No, I think that's so important. And in addition to what you just said, to piggyback off of that, I think there's a part of telling your story that's also healing for your own process of understanding what happened to you. And so not only when you speak up about it, are you helping other people know that they're not alone, providing education and a learning experience for other people who may have just gone through something or are currently going through something, but you're also like healing yourself in the process. Like it's kind of like a part of like narrative therapy that can be really empowering to feel like you're owning your story and like you're not letting it shame you. So I think there's something that can be really shaming about keeping our story to ourselves and feeling silenced because of it, because of all these fears of, you know, well, what is someone else going to think? And am I going to look weak? And are they going to question me? You know, that there are so many fears just to even get to that step of saying, you know, okay, I'm ready to share. And so I think it is really important to empower people to actually share. And that's part of why I want to do this. And part of why I want to have you on today, Ashley, too. Because you have...
Well, that's why I respect your podcast so much, because I do see you doing that a lot with other people. And I feel like every story that you're choosing to help tell is really important for other people to hear.
Okay, it's time for a little bit of a break to share one of our sponsors, Shoe Dazzle, who I love. And guys, it is springtime. We are going through our closets. It might be time to snazz up your shoe collection. And Shoe Dazzle is definitely the place to get your shoe fix. So not only do they actually have shoe stuff, they also have clothing, like really cute clothes and accessories. They just have thousands of ways to step up your look. And they actually have new hot styles that drop every week. You can shop as a guest, but I'm going to tell you right now that VIP is the way to go. You get this really fun style quiz that personalizes your shopping experience. So I'm definitely like much more of a solid color kind of person than I'm a patterned person. And when you sign up as a VIP, you save 30% off on most retail prices all day, every day. Plus, you get free shipping and returns, not to mention a bunch of other exclusive sales and perks. And it's a flexible membership, so each month you can choose to shop or skip. And now is the time to sign up, guys. You can be a VIP right now. You'll get your first pair of shoes for 75% off. That's as low as $10. You honestly, like, you can't beat that. This is an exclusive deal just for our podcast listeners. So make sure you go to shoedazzle.com/aboutit to get it. Again, that's shoedazzle.com/aboutit to step up your look today for as low as $10. One last time, guys, that's shoedazzle.com/aboutit. And now we can get back to the show. We literally all have a story, and all of our stories are like so different. Like there's definitely some similarities, but each person has such a unique life experience. And again, that's one of the things I love about doing therapy and being in the helping field is, you know, every single client is going to be different. You're going to learn like in depth someone new and what their story is. And it's never going to be the same thing. And in each of those stories, there's so much beauty, there's so much strength, there's so much resilience, there's a lot of pain to sort through, but it's a beautiful beautiful process. And I just think it's amazing how much we go through as humans, and especially as women, that we are just so resilient. And so I'm like very thankful for everyone that comes on and is willing to share their story. And I have not had a guest on that's shared stories like what you've experienced with rape and sexual assault. So this would be kind of a new topic for listeners to hear firsthand from someone. And so I'm curious, for you, what you're kind of comfortable sharing in terms of the relationship that you just spoke a little bit about, the one that you were in for 4 years. I know abusive relationships is a very touchy topic and something that so many people go through, and myself have experienced. So you're definitely not alone in that, which I know you know.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think I'm an open book with these two topics now. I think that enough time has passed, and I think the thing that was like the hardest for me was not forgiving those people. It was forgiving myself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because we get so hard on ourselves.
Yeah, and I would say that when you don't talk about it and when you're blaming yourself, that's your own like special prison that you live in for forever. And that was a dark place for me for a very long time. And I feel better about it, being able to talk about it. And if it helps at least one person, then I feel like it's worth it to tell that story.
Yeah.
But I don't know which one you want to start with.
Well, I guess one thing like people ask me a lot is like, how did you know, like, at what point did you realize that your relationship was becoming abusive or that it has been abusive? Like, was there a turning point, or did someone call something out for you? And kind of what were those maybe initial warning signs that you didn't realize at first were, signs that this would become abusive? And, did it literally take the physical part to come in? Because I think that's something that we all need to be reminded of, that like, even if an abusive relationship doesn't reach the point of physical violence, that does not mean that it was not abusive. Like, you can still be in a domestically violent relationship without it involving physical violence. Yeah,
I think that mine initially was more emotionally abusive, and I should have, actually, I don't know if I should have seen the warning signs, just because I was so young at that point, and that's something that you don't learn until much later. And I had kind of a special relationship with him and his family, because this is probably like way too much information, but kind of what happened whenever I was a senior in high school is that my parents had this very public divorce or splitting up, and I did not live with them any longer. So I moved into my boyfriend at the time's grandma's house. So I became very reliant on his family.
Yeah.
And I think that was something that was really tough on our relationship, just because I don't know if a high school relationship at that point is ready to tackle everything that comes along with that. Not blaming it on me, but just saying that
at was, the time as a high schooler, you're like, oh, we got this. But I'm really glad that you just made that distinction when you started off saying like, well, I should have known, like, because again, that is a part of like how hard we are on ourselves, of like blaming ourselves, being like, well, like this part was my fault and I could have done this differently. And I think it is helpful to look back and be like, this was something that now I would know going forward is like not okay. But you were so young, and like that's what we forget. Like when we are in high school, we definitely have this little invincibility. I'm blanking on the word, but we feel that we're invincible, and so we just like do all these ridiculous things. But like our prefrontal cortex is not fully developed, so like we're making all these decisions, and we still don't really fully know what we're doing. So it's not your fault.
I almost feel like too, I think I've just read too many books or seen too many movies where for some reason I thought there had to be this like constant source of like passion where like you're fighting really hard, you're making up really hard. Like that's what a relationship is.
Very dramatic.
So, yes. And so when that was happening, I was just thinking, oh, well, this is what great loves are made up of. And no, that is not what they should be like, especially in high school, you know? So yeah, it was just, there was a lot on our relationship, but two, he used me going through that really hard time to kind of put me through a lot of things emotionally. And then whenever I reacted negatively towards that, then he became physically violent. And because I was in such a vulnerable position, then I just put all the blame on myself. I thought I was like stressing him out too much, or I was being annoying, or this was too much for him to deal with. And so I put that all on me. And, it was just a lot to go through. You know, I had just like lost my family.
Yeah.
I was trying to get a scholarship to like go to college because I was like, well, now I don't have a family. Like, how am I going to go to school? So it was just a lot of stress, putting up with a lot of things that I shouldn't have put up with. But just because if I didn't have his family, I didn't know what I was going to do.
Yeah.
And,
so is it okay if I ask a question about family?
Yeah.
So basically then when this divorce came up, you just kind of were like, I'm not a part of this family anymore. And I don't want to have this relationship anymore. And that was when you left to go be with your boyfriend, or were there other parts there? Cause I don't think that that's totally like, a natural progression of a divorce. I don't know.
Oh, for sure. So this is kind of what happened. Whenever my parents decided to split up, my mom took my little sister, who is 9 years younger than me, and they moved about an hour away. And so I lived with, sorry if I cry at this part.
It's okay.
I decided to stay with my dad, who dealt a lot with depression too. And I think that it was just like too much for him. And he didn't know how to take care of me, and he didn't know how to like do it by himself. So one day he just left. So then it was just me trying to take care of myself. And I knew my mom and my sister couldn't move back at that point. So, I went and lived with my boyfriend at the time's grandma. And then once I had moved out, my dad actually came back. But wasn't like, you know, you can come back and stay with me or anything like that. And so, I mean, I think, you know, like my dad passed away when I was, older, but this is something that like really affected our relationship for a long time, just because, I mean, it was just like a really tough situation.
Yeah.
And I felt like in a lot of ways that he didn't want to take care of me, or he didn't want to, I don't know, kind of help me through that.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I mean, no, that was like a super, thank you for being open and sharing that. And I think, you know, already you were looking for a sense of safety, just knowing that your parents were separating. And so looking to that in your dad, and then, I mean, he basically just essentially abandoned you in that. And then, in that point, then you're kind of looking to a different male figure of your boyfriend now to kind of take care of you and be supportive. And then he's reacting in this very abusive way. And like, that's so much to go through at such a young age. And I mean, you had to grow up very fast.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like those were, sometimes I feel like I almost like blacked out 2 years of my life just because I was just going through so much. And then I was hoping going to college would kind of change a lot of things. And then my first year in college, basically, another really horrible thing happened.
Mm-hmm. Okay, it's time for a little break for a message from one of our sponsors that I want to share with you guys. So much of what we do with our skincare and our food and so many things that we do for ourselves, our fashion, are all personalized. And we love our animals so much. And I'm like, why is there nothing that like was personalized for our animals? So I want to introduce you guys to Puppo, which actually provides personalized nutrition for your dogs, from size and age to wellness goals and ingredient sensitivities. Puppo actually makes different like nutritional plans for your dog, so it's very unique. All other dog food out there is just kind of generic, and it's not really tailored to your dog's needs. So Puppo actually provides pet nutritionists on staff to answer any questions, and they use wholesome, natural ingredients and also include essential vitamins and nutrients. So real meat is always the first ingredient with no artificial flavors, colors, or preservatives or animal byproduct meal. And not only is that great, but then it's also a super easy, convenient system. So it just gets delivered to your door. There's no need to like lug huge piles of dog food around because that's just not fun. And so right now you guys can try Puppo for your dog. You can go to visit puppo.com/Taylor to get 14 days of personalized dog food delivered for only $9. And my family and I, we have 2 dogs, Mingo and Molly, a beagle and a pit, and their dietary needs are very, very different. So Puppo has worked super, super great for us. Again, you can visit puppo.com/Taylor to get 14 days of personalized dog food delivery for only $9. And that's PUPPO.com/Taylor. So make sure you check them out, and we can get back to the show. I want to touch very briefly, just you had said a second ago that, you know, you felt like maybe your dad like just didn't want to take care of you. And I'm sure your adult brain knows this. And I always like to separate between like our inner child and our adult version of ourselves, because especially when we think back to trauma or loss or anything really emotional, a lot of times it's that pain of that inner child coming back up and speaking, and of saying, you know, that he didn't want to take care of you. And I don't know your dad personally, but I would imagine that it was, you know, he didn't know how to, that even if he wanted to, that he was also kind of suffering from depression, like you mentioned, and going through a divorce, and that he had no clue how to be a parent to you at that time. And that's really heartbreaking for, you know, adolescent Ashley. And I'm sure if he could have changed that he would have.
For sure. And I think that's something too that'll like always weigh heavily on me, just because I didn't know everything he was going through at that point. And now that I'm older, like I can identify with it more, and I didn't know how deep his depression was. So for a long time I was very upset with him. Yeah. And now I get it. And I wish I could just be like, I get it, you know, but.
And that's still hard, because even when your like adult brain is like, I get it, I can make sense of it, that still doesn't take away from the pain that inner child feels and felt.
For sure.
You know, like that's still very real. You still felt like you weren't cared for. You still felt like you were maybe perhaps unloved, and that he didn't want to take care of you. Like all those feelings are still very valid and very real.
Yeah. No, for sure.
And then kind of like you said, you know, moving to college and thinking that that's going to change things. I think that's something we do so frequently. You know, we're like, oh, well, we're just going to move to a new stage of our life. But then all those things still follow us, you know?
Yeah.
And then new things happen.
Right. No. And I think that used to be my coping mechanism. It's just when things got bad, then I could just change my situation and hopefully make everything better. But
yeah.
That doesn't work.
Yeah.
At all.
Yeah. It really doesn't. That'd be a great, like, easy fix for most of our problems, but it doesn't work.
Yeah.
And so I'm curious if at any point during that time, were you introduced at all to therapy, like maybe in college or just going through the divorce in school, if you got in touch with like a guidance counselor, or if there were any resources that were, recommended to you at that time?
Yes. So actually, around this time, I did start seeing a therapist, and I also started taking Prozac.
Okay.
Because I was obviously just like very depressed as well, and someone in our school system was smart enough to like realize that I was going through too much, and there was someone that I needed to talk to that wasn't involved in our whole situation, that could kind of give me a different perspective on everything that was going on. But I will say that even in talking to that therapist, there was a lot that I didn't think I could tell that person. So I did keep a lot quiet.
Yeah.
That if I would have opened up about that, then maybe I could have addressed a lot of what was going on a lot better. Yeah. But I just wanted to protect everyone.
Yeah. Well, and I think another part of that too was just like the amount of time that you are in therapy. I think that the longer that you're with it and the stronger that your relationship grows with your therapist, that some of that fear and those walls start to come down.
For sure.
But
yeah, if I wasn't leaving and I could have addressed it for a lot longer, then I think I probably would have made a lot more breakthroughs in my therapy at that point.
Yeah. And so then you said once you were in college, a new kind of bad event happened. I'm assuming a new trauma occurred. And at that time, when you moved to college, were you still with this boyfriend?
Yes, yeah. I was still with the boyfriend. He was a year younger than me. So I would still, even though when I went to college, I would still go home a lot on the weekends to kind of keep our relationship alive. I don't know.
Yeah.
But what happened whenever I went to college is that I decided to join a sorority. And at the time, I thought that was a great way to meet new people and kind of just start all over. And at first it was great. And I made a lot of great friends. But at a mixer that we were doing with another fraternity, someone just put something in my drink. And I completely blacked out. I don't remember anything that happened. But when I woke up the next day, like, I can't describe that feeling to you, but basically I had only had sex with one person before this happened. And it felt like my insides had been like ripped out. Like, to this day, I still don't even know like what exactly happened. But yeah, it was not a great feeling. I actually did not know who did it until someone told me a little later from my sorority, like someone who had found me. And
found you back in your room, or?
No, in his room. And yeah, I felt like I tried to go to some people within the Greek system and some administrators at the school, and everyone was just basically like, because you didn't take the necessary steps to get a rape kit or things like that, there's really nothing that we can do, and it's in your best interest not to do that. Yeah, I just yeah, it was not great. And then at that point, I think my body just completely shut down. I developed colitis, which I don't know if you know what that is, but mine was caused by stress, and it was one of the most painful things I've ever gone through. I had to reduce my course load. at school just because I was sick all the time. I was so deeply depressed. Yeah. I had like the worst incident with that boyfriend at the time where like I went to see him and he broke a cell phone on my face. And then I think I just had like a mental breakdown, and I went to go see my mom, and I think she like really kind of helped me through that time. But I dropped out of the sorority. I just kind of was by myself for a while until I got out of that really dark place. And then I tried to stay at that school, but I never really felt safe there. I never felt like I could go out. I never felt like I could really like drink anymore there or anything. So at that point I decided to transfer schools just so I wouldn't have to think about it constantly. Like I would still see that person on campus. Like I had him in a class, like it was terrifying.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I wish I could give you a hug. I wish we were in person because that's so much to go through all within such a short period of time. And I mean, that had always been like my biggest fears in going out was, you know, potentially getting drugged and not knowing what would happen. And honestly, people ask me all the time why I don't drink. And that was a huge part of it. I wasn't in a sorority in college, but even in high school, I'd go to college parties at College Park in Maryland, and I would have my one water bottle and I would never let go of it. I had the cap on it at all times. Like, I was so terrified that something would happen. And a large reason why I never drank was because, you know, I would hear these stories and I was terrified. I was like, I don't want to not remember what happened. Not even if someone were to drug me, but just if I were drinking and something could happen and someone could take advantage of me. Like, I was just so terrified of that entire experience, just the potential of that happening, that I was like very freakishly cautious, like obsessively cautious almost at times. All right, it's time for a little break. I want to share with you guys a new sponsor to the podcast called Every Plate, where you can get meals delivered right to your door. And one of my biggest things when it comes to food is waste. And so I really, really dislike wasting food. And the food that I don't eat gets composted. So it's not fully wasted. And by using Every Plate, you actually don't have to buy more ingredients than what you need, because Every Plate's recipes come with everything already pre-measured. So I love that it cuts down on the waste that you're going to be using when you go to make a meal. Not only that, but when other dinner options cost around $10 per serving, Every Plate is offering 5 chef-designed recipes each week from only $4.99 per serving. So they have such a variety of recipes that you can pick from, and they usually only take about 30 minutes. So it's faster than going to the grocery store and then trying to pick a recipe and doing all this stuff. It just makes it a lot simpler. And so earlier this week, I made a pasta dish from them. We did get it with a little bit of bacon so that Canada Man could have some on his portion. And then mine was vegetarian, and it was really delicious. It just all kind of came together really quickly, and we didn't have to stress out about going to the store and making sure we had everything, that we had enough of everything. So highly, highly recommend using them. Again, we saved money on this. The meals are just so much simpler with using Every Plate. And right now, you guys can get 6 free meals across your first 3 weeks and free shipping on your first delivery. Just go to everyplate.com and enter LTHAS AI6. So again, that's basically let's talk about it. The first letters of each of that, everyplate.com, and enter LTAI6. This offer equates to 1/3 off of each of your first 3 boxes. And basically, as a podcast listener, you will receive free shipping off your first delivery, making the cost of your first box go down to $20. So make sure you check it out. Again, that's everyplate.com and enter LTAI6. And thank you so much to Everyplate for being a new sponsor for the pod. And now we can get back to the show. I can only empathize with what that must feel like to go through. And again, to get that response from people is so infuriating. And I really just hope that the more that people are able to hear what this is actually like to go through, then the more people will be able to empathize and, you know, try to actually help and do something about it, as opposed to make you feel shameful or make it so that you still have to have a class with this person and just kind of not have any answers as to what happened to you, and to have no kind of accountability for that person. You know, that's just so upsetting.
Right. And sometimes I do wonder if, just as much as I felt like wronged in these situations where I just felt like I couldn't speak out, that's why I almost like feel like I have to speak out about people now.
Yeah.
Where just like, if I can like even protect like one person, then I do feel like sort of this obligation to try to help out with things like this. So in a way, like, I hope my story can help people understand that a little bit.
Yeah.
And understand where like my drive, even though I know I can be like very passionate about it, I know it like puts some people off. Like, I hope that helps people understand.
Yeah. And I think too, even if someone hasn't experienced what you've experienced and they speak out very passionately about this kind of stuff, I still think it's, you know, totally valid and still something that people should be able to get behind. Of like, of course, why would you not be passionate about something like this? Like, that's really terrifying, and that's really a terrible thing to have happen. And so why would you not want to get behind that and make sure that that doesn't happen, you know? And I, for one, very, very, very much respect that you use your voice and that you speak up, because it is helping people. You know, you may not see it, you may not get told that it is, but it 100% is.
I hope so.
Yeah. And now you're married. And so I want to hear a little bit from you, like how you kind of, because I think especially today, like, I find my friends and meet women that feel like they're in such this state of like, fuck men, of like, there is so much shit that these men are doing and I'm so over it and I'm so tired of it, and just like not having any desire really to pursue them, and not feeling very connected, and just feeling like no man really gets it. And I'm curious for you, you know, I would almost unconsciously maybe put you in that category, given what you've experienced, that you would just kind of be like, it's very difficult to trust people and, you know, not sure how to go about building a healthy relationship. And so I'm curious from your kind of viewpoint, maybe in your reflection of the development of your relationship with your current husband, or, you know, just kind of what you've learned from all of that, and how people can go from, you know, abusive relationships and sexual assaults to having a loving, healthy marriage.
Yeah, okay. So I think that I've gone back and forth between being like, fuck men, I hate men, like, and then also just like being in very unhealthy relationships where I was trying to get answers from these men that like I wasn't going to get, or they weren't going to like fill those empty like holes in me that I needed filled. So with the help of therapy and with the help of actually I would say Steve, I feel like I've gotten to a good place just because I let him know all those things about me, and he never once felt like it was anything bad, and he didn't ever look at me like I was a victim. Like he looked at me like I was a survivor. Yeah. And I think that that's always given me a lot of strength just because like, I don't know. I never felt like when he was looking at me, he was like feeling sorry for me or he was feeling like I was someone who was damaged.
That needed to be taken care of in this kind of like damsel in distress way.
Right.
And also to clarify, this is Steve, husband, not Steve, reality Steve.
Oh, yeah. Which, a funny story, like, I always mess up because, like, I text both of them throughout the day. And sometimes I send them both, like, messages. And they'll just be like, wrong Steve. Which is so weird.
Yes. But I think that's, like, very, very sweet. And I've met Steve, and he is very sweet and very much adores you. And I think I'm not sure if that was kind of the first experience for you of dating, of sharing your story and feeling like he looked at you as like a strong, resilient woman as opposed to this sad victim that needed to be taken care of. But I think it's like really easy to mistake the latter for someone that's going to be good for us and that's going to rescue us. And, you know, I think that even that whole notion of someone rescuing us can be a bit dicey. Because
for sure.
You got to look at their motives and what holes that's filling for them and what they're kind of fulfilling. And I've had people that I've dated that felt like, you know, that they were saving me from, public relationships are hard. That they were saving me from, you know, a bad edit or, you know, that I was in a way a damsel in distress kind of thing. And whenever someone's ever brought that up to me of, you know, like, oh, damsel in distress, I'm like, yo, step back. I'm like, no,
right.
That's not the situation.
Yeah, no, I've had those guys too, where that's all he wanted to do. And in a lot of ways, I mean, this is a completely different relationship, but I think thought that he was doing me a favor. And by thinking that he was doing me a favor, he like in some weird way, like started resenting me and started acting out. And I mean, the way that manifested is he just like cheated on me all of the time, which is so weird when you think what he was trying to do is like trying to be a savior towards me, but then also just like hooking up with 20 women.
Real helpful.
Yeah, real helpful. Thanks. Just added to my list of issues.
Yep. But so Steve really looked at you and does look at you as a strong, resilient woman who's gone through these things, and you were like very transparent with him about what you've experienced, and you felt like he was kind of like, he was like, I'm on board with this. Like, you're a strong, badass woman that I can get behind, that I can stand beside.
Yeah. I mean, I even think I told him on our first date, and it did not scare him away at all. If anything, he was just like, wow, like you went through all that and somehow you're still here and you're still strong. And I respect that. So like, I loved hearing that from him.
Yeah. Was it something you had ever heard before?
No. No, 100% not. Or like, I feel like it was something I always kind of kept inside. I do take that back. I did have another great boyfriend in college who was really great at showing me, I think, kind of like what unconditional love is like. Or even just, he was like a source of kind of like steadiness in my life. Yeah. Even if he wasn't my boyfriend, he was always one of my best friends. And so he taught me a lot about just kind of, I feel like in college, it's very difficult to have a relationship. And so he was always like, love doesn't have to look like this. It can look like a bunch of different things. And we don't need to get like caught up in what we think it's supposed to look like. So I don't know. He taught me a lot of good things too. No, he was great. He taught me a lot.
Yeah. That's good. And like, I'm curious. I know for myself, my first relationship, the guy I lost my virginity to as well, he and I are not on speaking terms. Him and Derek are the only two exes that I have like zero communication with. And I'm curious for you if you ever have told that first boyfriend from high school, like how it's impacted you, or if you guys have any kind of a relationship today. It's always something, I don't know, it's a tricky thing when I think about it on my end with my first relationship, but to date, he's reached out a few times with some apologies and very long like Facebook messages and stuff, but I've never responded.
Yeah. He has reached out to me a couple of times to apologize, and at first I was not receptive to it at all. Mm-hmm. And then I think it was maybe like right after I got off the show, which I thought that was an interesting
interesting timing.
Oh yeah, then everyone, like comes out of the woodwork to offer their apologies or things like that.
Yeah.
But he went through some like tough stuff himself, and I did feel like he was sincere in his apology, and it helped me let go of a lot of things by being able to forgive him for all that. So I don't know. We don't talk really. I feel like I saw something that he put up on Facebook recently, and like I said something about it, but that's as far as it goes.
Yeah. I think there's like a small threshold of time as to when the relationship has quote unquote ended and someone can reach out with an apology and you kind of feel like sucked back in a little bit versus that once that threshold is passed and it's like, no, I've walked away and I'm done. And like nothing you say is going to change my mind. And like, I know that this was wrong and this is not what I want. And I'm not about it anymore. And so I think it sounds like for both of us, and granted, when I look back at mine, like there were several of those that happened within that threshold where we kept going back and forth. But that once that decision was made and it was like, nope, we're done. Like, this is really like, I'm fully walking away from this. That apology, in a way, it did help me forgive him. And this is where I've always been like very curious and interested in doing work with perpetrators of sexual violence and sexual abuse because for several reasons. But I struggle because I don't want to demonize or dehumanize these people.
Right.
But at the same time, I do want them to be held accountable and to understand how they are hurting other people. And so part of me is like, oh, well, yeah, I should be able to just have a friendship and understand where he's coming from and, yada, yada, yada. But boundaries come in.
Right.
And those are really
when
important.
It's so different when it's personal for you,
Yeah.
I don't know. Oh.
Yeah. It's so uncomfortable to talk about.
Yeah.
But it's important too.
It is.
Yeah. And I really, really appreciate like a lot of this. Like I knew that you had shared, also that you'd been in abusive relationships and that you had experienced this sexual assault, but had never actually had a chance to have your story be told and shared with me. And as we said, my time in New York was cut short, and so we didn't get to chat more and bond more. But I love you so much even more after, learning all this. Like already I was like, Ashley is just such a badass and like is such a strong, like resilient woman and like just doesn't let other people bring her down like at all. And I've always loved that about you. And just like knowing more of your story is just like, just reinforces that you're fucking badass. I haven't
always been that way. I was like a doormat for a very long time. So I hope like now, kind of more of my story. And like, I knew the first time I met you that like we were kindred spirits. Like I already loved you. Like even before I met you, I just knew that this was going to be like a perfect friendship. Just, I don't know. I feel like we've always gotten each other. Like we have so much like mutual respect and admiration for each other. So just now I feel the same way about you.
Oh, thank you. So sweet. And honestly, even when you felt like you were a doormat, you still had all of this strength in you. You just didn't know how to come out with it yet, you know?
Right.
Like, it's so hard. I frequently do go back, you know, and I, even within the last 2-3 years from being on the show, I'll go back and kind of think about Taylor then, that version of myself, and talk to that version of myself. And sometimes I do. I see myself as like, I was a total doormat, and I was like so submissive and so quiet. And it's like, you know, I look at myself as weak almost. And then it's like, I have to, you know, have adult brain, talk to child brain here and be like, no, like you still had all that strength in you, but look at what you were dealing with. Like, that was so difficult for you to speak up and to stand up, and like you were not weak in that moment. You really got to have compassion for the whole context of everything that was happening. And again, I'm so proud to know you. I'm so proud to know your story. And I just think you're so resilient. And again, like every time I talk to people on here, like I had Caroline on, and I don't know if you've talked with Caroline.
I love her.
Yeah, like she was amazing. And I'm just like, the more that I hear other people's stories and the more that I just like get to know people on a deeper level, I'm just like, God damn. We're so strong.
No, seriously. And this is something like I want people to get, like, even from the show. And I, you know, like I don't want people to put too much stock into the show, because I think that one thing that's like similar with me and you is not that we necessarily like hated our time on the show, because I don't, but what I wanted to do after the show is show people that I was more than that.
Yeah.
That wasn't all I had to offer, and that there was more to me. And I think that sometimes when people do go on the show, they can get very caught up into what viewers think they're supposed to be like. And try to maintain that personality and identity after the show. And it doesn't have to be that way.
Yeah.
You know, you can show people like all aspects of your personality and yourself when you get off. And so that's what I really love that you do on your show.
Thank you. Yeah. It's like, honestly, I've gone back and forth, and even my boyfriend now, he, you know, has known nothing about the show. He doesn't have an Instagram. Like, he's very private, and, you know, he's also very business minded. And so I talk about the podcast and this video on Instagram, and therapy stuff is all kind of separate. But, you know, he does kind of ask me, like, how come I don't go to these premieres? How come I don't do these things? And to me, it's like, you know, I'm okay if I lose 40,000 followers because I'm no longer in a bachelor relationship, because those people only wanted to follow me because of Bachelor and because of that relationship. And honestly, parts of it, it's like, it's not good for your mental health to get caught up in this game of, how do I increase my followers? I got to go to this Bachelor premiere, and I got to be friends with this Bachelor person. And it's just so much, and it's exhausting, and it's not at all authentic. And I think you do get caught up in this reinforcement of social media, the positive reinforcement of likes, of engagement, of followers, and wanting to keep all of that up. And it just, to me, for some people, it's authentic, and, you know, maybe it works for them. And for me, I'm like, that's just so inauthentic for me. It's bad for my mental health, and like, it's not worth the money. It's not worth the quote unquote fame. Like, again, I think it's really important to showcase that, you know, I am multifaceted. It is not just The Bachelor. And to continue to characterize and, you know, make the women and the men on the show these very one-dimensional characters, I think is like very harmful. So
it is.
I love that it connects me with women like you who are badass and speak out and, you know, allow themselves to be more than one thing and not just be entertaining for people. So I appreciate it.
I mean, I'm so boring. Like, on my Instagram, it's just like books and like burly.
Yes. So I want you to share this with people, because you post a lot about books, but you have like a whole little book club. And so I think people should find you there. So how do they find that?
So there is a link on my Instagram profile at Ashley Spivey. But you can also find it on Facebook. I wish that it wasn't on Facebook, but honestly, there's like not a better platform for it. Yeah. So until I can like create my own website, it's just going to have to be on Facebook. But it's hashtag Spiveys and then the book emoji club. And I kind of made it hard to find on purpose just because I didn't want it to like blow up and me not be able to handle it. But I think we've really kind of like found our footing at this point and it's running pretty well. But I really feel like me, in dealing with all of the hard things in my life, reading has always been a form of self-care for me. Because it allows me to just like take that vacation that I can't do in my normal life. It's just like, let me not talk to people for a while and read about this whole other situation.
It's a healthy escape. Like getting blacked out, wasted is an unhealthy escape.
Exactly.
Reading, healthy coping mechanism.
Yeah. So that's why I really love to push people to read and kind of just to, I don't know, instead of turning on the TV or, I don't know, just doing something unhealthy like that, going out and drinking. Like sometimes it's just nice to just relax with a book. So that's what we're doing on the book club.
And then people can also listen to you on Reality Steve's podcast as well.
Yes. And so my podcast with him, and people ask this all the time, there are no Bachelor spoilers in our podcast. Ours is purely about relationships or just questions people have where they want two different opinions about what they think like they should do. So it's the He Said, She Said podcast. You find it under just the Reality Steve podcast. There's no like separate thing for it. But it's something I've really enjoyed doing with him. I feel like we have a great mix of, there's been some really hilarious calls where Steve has learned about dental dams and things like that. Like those were my favorite episodes where he really like learned something.
Yes.
But then we've also had some really serious ones too. And I think that even if you aren't experiencing any of the things that these people are going through, I think it helps you become a more empathetic and sympathetic person.
Absolutely.
So that's why I would encourage people to listen.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, I did do one episode with him, and it was a good episode.
I love him. I know that he's not everybody's like cup of tea, and I think like one thing even with him is that he's someone who is open to learning.
Yes,
and he knows.
I noticed that when I was a guest because we talked a little bit about abusive relationships, and he was very inquisitive and had very good questions, and it was very much in a way, a learning moment for him to have me share my story. So I did appreciate that about him.
Yeah. And I think that some people have called out, rightly so, that he has been misogynistic sometimes in his recaps or things like that. But just, I think that he actually is someone where if you try to tell him that, he listens and he course corrects. You know, he really does try to make a difference in the way he talks about people or talks to people. So don't give up on him. He's actually, he's a good person. He has a good heart. Yeah. For sure.
At first I was skeptical. And then when I knew that like you and Charlene were, good with him, I was like, okay, there's more to him that I just don't know yet.
Yeah, that's what I would say is if Charlene and I have both done a podcast with him, like he's a good person. I think we're pretty good judges of character.
Yes. Yeah. Well, you guys should definitely check out Ashley both at the book club and then on Reality Steve's podcast. And I'll put links to both of those in the episode notes as well. But thank you so much, Ashley. This is honestly so wonderful. And I could keep talking to you for like many more hours about all of this. And we could go so much deeper in all of it. But I just really appreciate you, sharing and being open with us like this.
Well, thank you for having me on, and I'll come back on anytime, and hope I get to see you soon.
I know, same. We'll work something out.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much.
To Seattle. All right.
That does it for today's episode. Thank you guys so much for tuning in to this episode. I really hope you guys enjoyed Ashley as much as I did. I think she's just absolutely wonderful. And if you guys have any topics that you guys want to see covered or guests that you want to see on the podcast, you can send emails to ask.letstalkaboutit@gmail.com. And as always, I love reading your guys' reviews on iTunes. So if you can head on over there and leave a review or give us a star rating, that's greatly appreciated. And as always, we will be back next week talking to someone else about something cool. So have a good rest of your week, and I'll talk to you next time.
This podcast is brought to you by Wave Podcast Network. Check out all of our shows, including the Brain Candy Podcast, I Don't Get It, Coffee Convos, and Let's Talk About It.